Reina, meaning queen, was my mama's name. She transitioned from this world 4 years ago. She had vascular dementia toward the end of her life, as well as macular degeneration. The American Academy of Ophthalmology describes this condition as a loss of vision or other eye disease that can cause hallucinations of images that aren't actually there. It can also be described as holes or gaps in the sight that the brain will fill in with things previously seen, memories, at some point in the person's life. Most often, my mama would see horses, shimmering, near and far, all colors and sizes. She was born on the island of Vieques in Puerto Rico, where wild horses still roam free. Their origin can be traced back to the 16th century when Spanish conquistadors first introduced them to the island. Over time, they adapted to the local environment and thrived, eventually becoming an essential part of the island's ecosystem and cultural heritage. Much like the horses of Vieques, the exquisite resilience and beauty of nature has always fascinated me. So highly attuned to environmental cues, the monarch butterfly in particular has a uniquely multi generational migration pattern. The Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation describes it takes 4 to 5 generations usually to complete and includes up to 3,000 miles of territory. Even without knowing exactly where they're headed, but feeling the pull towards home somehow. Even without knowing their own glorious beauty, their own innate belovedness. We're like this too. The fact that the monarch butterfly was once crawling through the dirt on its belly and then mummified in a sack of chrysalis soup must have felt like outright ruin. And yet, we know that is far from the end of the story. Again, we are like this. Reclaiming this is a part of the resistance to the darkness, pain, and cynicism that threatens to overtake us daily. Just as the butterfly can't recognize the phenomenon of its own transformation, there are stories that we're fed that we feel powerless to question. The monarch butterfly population went from millions in the 1980s to just over 200,000 in 2024. We have to be willing to confront things like this if we want change for nature and for humanity. In 1941, just shortly after the attack on Pearl Harbor, there were approximately 800 families inhabiting the island of Vieques, a territory of the United States, so neither its own state nor an independent nation, but having nothing to do with the attack on Pearl Harbor. With no vote, no request, and no consent given, the United States government arrived that same year and began taking land from those families, from fishermen, sugar plantation farmers, forcing residents from their homes, upending the agricultural ecosystem, and making food supplies scarce, otherwise creating a war zone where there was none. Did you know they created a war zone where there was none. Reckoning with uncomfortable truths is essential on the path to reclaiming belovedness. Valerie Kaur says, love is sweet labor, fierce, bloody, imperfect, and life-giving. When we labor in love in a time of rage, love becomes revolutionary. This is the story of my journey home to where I had not yet been, to honor my part of the generational migration of my own lineage and the reclaiming of my belovedness. It begins in Vieques, an island only 21 miles long, 5 miles wide, and just 6 miles off the mainland of Puerto Rico. With very little notice and no recourse to speak of, families were forced from their homes, and their family homes were bulldozed. Many were given only tarps to live under for months until the Navy brought materials, directing them to rebuild in the center of the island. The displaced Vieques were either sent out off the island completely or compressed into the overcrowded remaining 23% of their island. The agricultural economy was crushed with the seizure of 17.5 thousand acres of land. This was to create an extensive practice range for war exercises and weapons testing. In March of 1950, the Navy held its first large-scale joint training exercise in Vieques, Operation Portrax. It included 32,000 troops and all 4 branches of the military with the purpose of preparing the United States for its part in the Korean War. Much like the Monarch butterflies, the conditions for the Vieques became less than ideal. I want you to imagine for a moment what it must have felt like to be a child in the 1940s in Vieques. My mama's nickname growing up was Queenie. She was born in Vieques in 1939. So she was one of those 800 families. That means she was 2 when all of this began. So everything she knew, her family, her friends, her community, was life in a constant mock war zone. We have to see the dark and the light. It is the only true portal to our collective liberation. I stand on this stage because I believe the only way out is through this portal in love, in revolutionary love. Maya Angelou says, we often delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it's gone through to achieve that beauty. I completed my migration home to where I had not yet been by returning to Vieques for the first time this last November. Almost immediately, I saw the wild horses roaming free. And I instantly remembered my mama's visions of those majestic creatures. To this day, an estimated 2,000 of those beautiful animals remain, descendants of those brought there in the 16th century, have become emblematic of its rich history and a living link to the past. Standing there, it's like I could feel my mama right beside me, holding my hand again, as we often did. And beside her, her mama, mi abuela, named Carmen, a woman I never knew in this life. She was there too, holding my mama's other hand. And beside her, her mama, and so on. All this while watching the horses that shimmered in her memories the same way she now shimmers in mine. My mama only knew her painful childhood memories, her scarcity, and her fear. She might have believed it had more to do with where she came from than with the powerful military that came in, forcing her and all she knew from her home to practice bombing that echoed the sounds of war just miles from where she laid her head each night. It would perhaps make sense that escaping that to her would mean leaving all of that behind, including her culture and her language, and that it would be safer for her children to not be connected to any of it at all. Valerie Kaur also says, wonder is where love begins. When we choose to wonder about people we do not know, when we begin to imagine their lives and their stories, we can begin to expand the circle of who we see as a part of us. Who is it that you might begin to wonder about? Who could you begin to see as a part of you? The land you live on now, who first occupied that ground? Could you, in love, begin to expand your circle and reclaim the truth of that space? Here is one simple thing you can do. Go to native-land.ca or Native Land Digital, an organization that strives to foster and create conversations about the history of colonialism, Indigenous ways of knowing, and settler Indigenous relations through a map and territory acknowledgement guide. You just put in your zip code, and you can find out about the history of the Indigenous people who first occupied the land you now live. If wonder truly is where love begins, and you are willing to open your heart just a bit and expand the circle of who you see as a part of you, then you can maybe take my other hand as we reclaim the light and dark of our collective liberation. I can't truly reclaim my belovedness if I deny yours. Like the light from a candle, it will suffocate if closed off, but loses nothing when shared and often only grows brighter. We are all a part of a generational migration on our way home to where we have not yet been. We can choose to acknowledge this in revolutionary love and wonder by expanding our circles of who we see as a part of us, as a part of our collective belovedness. Thank you.